Hello and welcome to Horsepower. It's been a while coming, but I finally have an update on this project. We've been chipping away in the background for a few years now, and this is where Scott and I are up to on the 5S GTE Beams JZA80 Supra race car. This is where our transmission tunnel is at the moment. This exhaust cover thing all welded in with a wee piece in here so the exhaust will spin around, and then top 3mm plate, hole for the shifter, and some little mounts there for the hydraulic handbrake. Oh yes.
I know that. That's very satisfying.
Samson's sequential shifter in, handbrake lever is in, no more leaks in the tunnel. Great success. Today's job is to start on the fuel system. What we're going to do is put the fuel system where the rear seats used to be. The idea behind that is it moves the weight from the back of the car to the center of the car, and then it's also enclosed by the roll cage, so it's nice and safe. This gives us a lot of freedom in terms of what fuel cell we're going to use. As such, I don't think an off-the-shelf one is going to work, so we're going to make a custom job. What we're going to do first is use a bit of CAD design. It's the cardboard dated design, and we're going to make a dummy fuel tank out of cardboard and then make sure we can squeeze it in to past the roll cage. There's no point making a fuel system that we can't access. So that's the first job. Once we've got that fuel tank size finalized, we can start designing an enclosure.
So we have a nicely bead roll piece in here for the backing part of our enclosure. So this is like a firewall per se, just for keeping the fuel cell in. So this will all have to be sealed up. So yeah, made these side pieces. A little bit of trimming still needs to be done to get it right, and then we'll bead roll a nice pattern in there too. Made one up for the other side as well, and then we're going to put a part across here and a lid, and then hopefully we can pull this off, drop the tank in, put that bit on, strap the tank down, and we should be good. And then lid on, and it should all be gravy. But yeah, a little bit of trimming, and need to put a little bit of a fold like that on here for mounting of the lid. But yeah, pretty happy with how that's coming out.
Done some arts and craft here. It was quite good fun actually. Brings me back to being in primary school, and we can see that it just slides through the cage there quite nicely. However, it sits up too high, so what we're going to do is chop an angle off the bottom of the tank, and hopefully that'll slide in a bit more nicely. It's probably going to need a bit of other trimming here and there, but it's a good start. So now we've got our main bit of the fuel tank all tacked up. What we need to do now is set this little fella in here. So this is a unit from a Camry, and so this has got a fuel pump and a fuel sender all integrated in it. And so the Camry tank this came out of is quite short, so you can see the level where it goes up and down. So what we need to do is extend this out, and that'll gain more height to suit the tank we have here. And what we're going to do is we've got this laser cut piece here which matches the pattern on the cradle, and then we will weld that into the top piece here. It's time to start modifying the sump. This is the 5S sump, and so I'm just going to give it a trim all around here. I've got the factory Altezza pump here, and what I want to measure is where the oil level sits relative to the block. So that's about 55 mil, and so that'll basically tell us a few little things, because we need to drain the oil from the head into the block as the factory Altezza does, and I was hoping to drain it into the sump directly rather than going through the block. So I'm going to have to see if that'll work. So here's the base plate for the sump, and I'm going rather overkill with this. It's going to be 3 mil thick. We're going to do some dumb things with this car, so I want to build the sump accordingly. The sump's actually quite thick. It's actually 2 mil steel, which is pretty cool. Alright, our sump is all finished. It's looking nice and black, and this is obviously the sump off the 3SGE beams, and obviously the main reason we couldn't use this is a front sump designed to clear an Altezza subframe, and this wouldn't have worked with the JZA80 subframe, so we've had to shuffle this back. This uses like a base of a 5S sump here, and then it's been chopped up and modified. You could have potentially done the same with this, but steel is way easier to work with. We can see here that this is obviously a two-piece, as sort of the norm with this era of engine, and one of the big differences between the 3SGE and the 5S is that the oil galleries actually run through the casting of the sump here. So this is the oil relief valve here, and the oil filter location, oil pressure sensor. So this 5S sump doesn't have any of that. So what we've had to do, well, it actually worked out quite nicely, is to use the 5S oil pump on the 5S block, and then it's got all of those galleries inside the oil pump and doesn't actually run through anything in the sump, which makes it quite easy. Also, that late model 5S oil pump has a crank trigger location for it as well. So yeah, that'll be going in the scrap. If we turn this over, we can see inside there. So we've got a baffle here, so the pump's obviously the pickup's just gonna sit down there, and then when the car accelerates, it should contain the oil within this baffle here. Also, horizontal baffles like these are actually quite important, so when the car goes around the corner, the oil sloshes that way, but due to these horizontal baffles, it can't actually slosh around as much, and then another baffle here, so when you accelerate back, the oil is hopefully going to be contained in that. It is somewhat problematic with a front sump like this. You get the same problem with JZs and basically anything with a front sump. I guess particularly on a straight 6 with a JZ, is that when you accelerate, all the oil goes out of the sump towards the back of the motor, which is not ideal. Whereas a rear sump in the JZs are actually far more reliable, and this is, I guess, sort of a rear sump, sort of a mid sump. These are actually quite a good sump. They've got a nice baffle system from factory, but it's still in the front, so that's always going to have that as a hindrance. Anyway, I should probably go over these little ports here. So this one here is a drain back for a catch can. It may not be used, but I'll put it there anyway. And that is the dipstick tube. And then over here we have the oil return and the head drain, which is factory on the 3SGE Altezza. And if we don't want oil pooling up in the head, then that's quite important. This bottom end is the same combination as used in my Celica rally car. 5S block and crank, standard stroke at 91mm. The block was crow treated and bored out to 87.5mm. It has the very strong powder connecting rods along with the custom Traum pistons. Compression ratio is at 9.5 to 1, meaning we can happily run on pump fuel or E85. For further information on the engine, check out my Celica build videos. And we have just got this back from Canelli Cams. This is very similar to the cylinder head that I built for my Celica rally car. It's built by the same guys to very similar specs. I've had a few failures with the cylinder heads, well, not this particular one, but one very similar in my rally car. So that car has laid the groundwork for developing this engine. And these heads are a little bit fragile once you start doing things like launch control, anti-lag, and general turbocharging. So these 3SGE cylinder heads were obviously never turbocharged. However, they respond very well to turbocharging in the terms of power. However, keeping them reliable is the hard bit. And my cylinder head on the Celica so far has been very reliable. So what we've done to this cylinder head is, first of all, a factory manual intake cam, and I should also mention this base here is a manual cylinder head. The difference between the manual and the auto is the manual has bigger buckets and bigger cams. They're the same casting. So they're a better base to start with, and so when you have bigger buckets you can run bigger cams. So what we've done is you can't really see them, dual valve spring, same setup as the other motor. It's got Honda K20 exhaust valves and Honda H22 intake valves, which happen to be the right diameter. The exhaust valves are 1mm oversize, and we have taken the shims, which usually live under the bucket there, and basically thrown them in the bin, welded up the tips of the valves so that no shim can ever come loose, and hold the valve open. These are interference heads, so we need to be very careful to control the valves properly. In terms of exhaust cam, what we've actually done is taken a factory 3SGE intake cam and put it into the exhaust. And then we have, well, not me, but Canelli Cams have reground their own profile onto these cams. The reason we did that is because the base circle, basically this measurement here, is bigger on the intake, which basically gives you a whole lot of room to grind the cam down to whatever specs you want. That does introduce a couple of problems, which I'll go through shortly, as well as the the other stuff that's been done to the head is just general cleaning and tidying and you know, getting ready to race basically. So new valve stem seals, recut valve seats, surface cylinder head, and also a light port and polish. Nothing too crazy, just basically doing a quick easy job to get some reasonable gains for not much work. So yeah, hopefully this will be a good thing. In terms of changing the cams over, what we need to do is move this dowel here. So here we have a factory exhaust cam, and if we put this in the same orientation as the one in the head, we can see that those dowels are on a different place. So I'm going to have to re-drill this and put a new dowel in around there. As well as that is the trigger system here, which is important for relaying the cam position back to the ECU to control the variable valve timing. So again, there's a wee dowel on the end of it, and it's in a different place on the exhaust, so I'm going to have to either there's a few ways we could do it. We could weld this, just remove the dowel and weld that onto the right place, or we could re-drill the trigger itself to suit this dowel, or we could re-drill the cam and move the dowel, which is the proper way to do it. And here we have the little machined jig. Let's see if it fits. Perfect. So that locates on that little dowel there, and that lines up nicely with those two oil control holes. So what we'll do is we'll take this off, put it onto the other cam, and we'll put a bolt, like a 4mm bolt, through these holes to line it up, and then send a drill through that hole. Once I drilled the hole through with the lathe, I then set it up on the mill and set up this little dowel hole, which is conveniently 10mm across from the centre, and now that will line up with that dowel, and then we can put the bolt through. And now what we're going to do is basically set up a reference, and for this I'm going to take the top of the lobe, so I'm just going to weld a plate onto here which is going to line up with these two lobes, and then we can transfer it across, line the guide up with the two lobes, and then drill a hole into the back of the cam. Now we got the head on, it's time to assemble all the drivetrain, but before we can do that we need to make some little mods to this. So this is the I guess the front cam cap, but also integrates all of the variable valve timing, oil passages and solenoids. The 3S block doesn't have a provision for oil feed for the for the VVTi, so what we need to do is run an external line, and what we're going to do is run it from basically where the oil filter is up to this port here, and then we're going to block off this port here where it usually feeds up from the head. So I've machined up this little plug here, so that's going to get press fit into there, and then we're going to remove this and we're going to tap that to M10 by 1.5 for our banjo bolt. Here is our brand new oil pump, a genuine item from Toyota, and there is a few different options we could use depending on the configuration of the rest of the motor, but the one we've gone for is a late model 5S, and the reason we've done this is for two reasons. One, this is the highest flowing pump that I'm aware of, and it's actually the same as the factory beams. The reason we've gone for this rather than the beams pump is that it is designed to use an old school steel sump pan, which makes it easier for us to modify to fit into the chassis, so we need to make a custom sump. The other good thing about the late model 5S pump is it has provision for a crank sensor, which will bolt in just there. So what we need to do to this pump is pull the pump out of the housing, and we'll put some engine assembly lube in there to prime it and press in the front crank seal. Here is a wee segment that no one needs, but it is quite interesting. So we've got a 2JZ pump here, oil pump, and a 3S oil pump here. Holy moly, look at the size difference. It's only got 2 extra cylinders, but it needs a shitload more oil. Here is our crank scraper bolted down. This is just a factory Altezza 3S one, and it's spaced up a little bit to clear the longer throw of the crank. And now we're going to install our custom oil pickup. Now with the engine completed, we can move back to the vehicle and start the exhaust. I've made many exhausts over the years, but I've never run a wastegate pipe right to the back. If nothing else, this should provide a unique noise. Alright, we're at a big milestone here. The exhaust is all done, and it's a very unique exhaust, as we can see. At the back here we've got the main exhaust, centre exit. As you guys may know, I quite like symmetry, and this is very symmetrical, and obviously the wastegate pipe's coming out either side. And if we come down here and have a look, we've made a rather extravagant exhaust here, which obviously has the main exhaust coming through here, and the wastegate pipe here, which is a 45mm, and then splits off into two 38s. It's not 100% complete yet, we still need to pull it off and complete some of the welds on top and a couple of exhaust hangers, but that's basically all done, and we're pretty damn happy with it. Basically, we've tried to get it up as high as we can as well. And as you can see, we've notched the subframe here just to lift this up a little bit. That's sort of the best we can do, really. The Supras always kind of have the exhaust hanging below the subframe, so yeah, that should help. And basically we're at the point now where all the major fab is done, and then now we can pull out the motor and we can tidy up the engine bay. Got a couple of things in the tunnel to finish off underneath the car, and we'll look at tidying up the underfloor, probably give it a good wash and underseal.